Any health-related information on the following show provides general information only. Content presented on any show by any host or guest should not be substituted for a doctor's advice. Always consult your physician before beginning any new diet, exercise, or treatment program.
Welcome to Accelerated Health Radio and TV. I'm your host, Sarah Banta. I'm a health coach, natural supplement expert, and a busy mom of 3 teenagers. I believe your body does want to and is capable of rebuilding and healing itself regardless of what chronic disease you may have. And I'm here for you to answer your questions, bring you innovative and cutting-edge technology and health solutions to empower you and your ability to reach your optimal state of health. Today, my guest will be talking about supplements and how they can help with energy and anti-aging. And it seems like there are 2 camps in society. One is trying to reverse their chronic metabolic diseases, and the other is trying to anti-age or increase longevity with different diets, modalities, and biohacks. But the irony is that aging is a condition associated with the higher risk of these metabolic diseases that most of us are trying to reverse. So in actuality, these 2 groups have the same ultimate goal: to reverse chronic disease, which will increase that lifespan and slow down the aging process. So what if I told you could take it a step further and reverse your aging? By reversing aging or having your biological age go backwards while your chronological age ticks forward, then your risks of these metabolic diseases diminish. And not only will you live longer, but your quality of life will improve with age. So what are the basic markers for aging? Oxidative stress and inflammation. And that's why so many people look to antioxidants and anti-inflammatory supplements or diets to increase longevity. And what are the top 2 things that cause that oxidative stress and inflammation? Insulin resistance and toxicity. If you're new to following me, I specialize in helping you reverse that chronic disease and ultimately reverse the aging process. You can find my health articles, my cutting edge natural supplements, devices, and protocols at acceleratedhealthproducts.com. I dive into an array of health conditions, their causes and symptoms, and how to address them naturally. And I have put together the most comprehensive cleanse that starts turning back that clock within 30 days. It comes with free group coaching and scalar frequency enhanced supplements to make the transition easy. And the groups have reported that easy fat loss for those stubborn pounds, increased physical energy, increase in sustained mental focus, brain fog goes away, better bowel movements, you got to get it out if you want to get rid of that toxicity, decreased appetite and the ability to intermittent fast, clear skin, wider eyes, better sleep, less moodiness, and something called increasing or improving the phase angle, improving the cellular permeability, which allows the toxins to get out of the cells and the nutrients to get in. At the end of the month, you successfully flush down the gallstones and liver stones in the toilet and out of the body. And at the end, you also have a deeper understanding of how you can take control of your own health and naturally heal your body safely. The difference between me and any other group is I provide the most cutting edge scalar frequency enhanced supplements that work synergistically with each other, and your body doesn't experience those flu-like symptoms. You truly do feel great day 1. So leave a comment below if you're interested, or check it out on the website, acceleratedhealthproducts.com. Now to the good stuff. Shawn Wells is someone I've been following for years. He doesn't know it. He has formulated over 500 supplements, food, beverages, cosmeceuticals, and patented 10 novel ingredients, and is now known as the Ingredientologist, the scientist of ingredients. Formerly a chief clinical dietitian with over a decade of clinical experience, he has counseled thousands of people on natural health solutions such as keto, paleo, fasting, and supplements. He has also personally overcome various health issues, including Epstein-Barr, chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, depression, insomnia, obesity, and even a pituitary tumor. Welcome, Shawn. How are you today?
I am good.
Oh, who do you have there?
My cat, Shinobi.
I love it.
I am great. It's great to be on the show. I'm excited to get into it and give you some answers as well as your followers.
Yes, we've got so much to talk about. First, I want to give everyone a little backstory of your story and your journey because, pain to purpose. And if there's anyone in this world who has taken his issues, because I'm looking at all of the issues that I just listed off that you've gone through, and every single one of them requires or is a lack of energy, essentially, correct? I mean, mentally and physically. And so you have had to personally overcome that. And now you, of course, are the king of how to increase your energy. So why don't we start with your journey?
Man, it started with a chaotic childhood, where I was bullied and a lot of things going on at the home as well. And, it led me to become a junk food junkie. I put on a lot of weight. I was morbidly obese in high school. Had a very low self-esteem, and that led to pretty much severe depression, anxiety, low self-esteem in general. And then my health started declining as a result once I got into college. And I did end up finding weight training, finding supplements, taking protein and creatine and some of these things that were coming out and hitting the market, and reading these bodybuilding magazines. And I did make a pretty decent transformation. And I went to my doctor at the time and told him how passionate I was about supplements. And he was seeing this big change in my body, and he was excited for me. And I was in school for business at the time. And, I told him, but I guess this is just, it's a hobby. It's a thing I like. And he ended up drawing out this lifeline for me and saying, it was between 20 and 80. And he said, why not be happy between here and here? And he gave me permission, at the time, like it really changed my life path to say, oh my goodness, I can just go pursue supplements as a thing. I can be a formulator. And at the time, there was basically no one doing that, at least that I had heard of and known. And I ended up finishing up my degree and, going to UNC Greensboro to get all these classes. My parents were down in North Carolina because my dream was to go to UNC Chapel Hill for nutrition and biochemistry and exercise science. And so I ended up getting all the prereqs but while I was pursuing my degree at Chapel Hill, working like 80 plus hours a week between, jobs and student aid and working at GNCs and restaurants and the schooling and all that. I ended up getting really, really sick. And that's when I got Epstein-Barr, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, Hashimoto's. My body just shut down. And for about 6 months, I was in bed. And during this time, I had lost the weight, but I also ended up becoming more body dysmorphic and I was anorexic at one point and then orthorexic. So I went from 300 pounds to 150 pounds as someone who's 6'2", 6'3". And then I ended up being 100 or 220 pounds and jacked and ripped, but I was like working out 4 hours a day. And at no point was I healthy with my mindset or how I viewed my body, at no matter what my body type was. So that was part of my body shutting down, I believe, is how much I hated it. And yeah, I was in bed for about 6 months with severe pain and inflammation. My nerves were just firing off. And it wasn't until I started looking at keto, this is 20 years ago,
Wow.
that keto really changed my life. I was on some message boards and I ended up doing keto and then working on some immune health supplements. Up until that point, I was just obsessed with sports nutrition, but my passion shifted as a result, and that changed everything. And then, I ended up getting into after about 10 years of working clinically, getting to my dream job of this job at Dymatize formulating supplements. But here again, they were pushing for sale. It was a 3-year hard push. And again, I was working 80 hours a week and I ended up getting a brain tumor. So then my research and my formulations started shifting towards brain health and mental health, because I had always been fighting depression, anxiety, imposter syndrome, all of these things I was struggling with. And my biggest shift was actually about 2 years ago, right before COVID hit, when I did plant medicine the first time. And that really shifted everything for me. That was the first time that I realized that I could just love myself, and I didn't have to just hope for external validation. I didn't have to dream that someday someone will love me enough that I will love myself. I realized that I can just love myself. And you can tell someone that, but it's not until you've truly anchored it in your heart and mind and felt it like you can in this space. For me, that really, I don't think if I hadn't started going down that plant medicine path, doing psilocybin mostly, I don't think I would be here, honestly. I was really pushing my body and brain to the limits, and I learned all the biohacks as a result of a way to keep myself going, despite the self-hatred, despite the incredibly long hours, despite the relationships I would get myself into with partners that were tenuous. It was very difficult what I was doing and what I was asking of my body, with giving it so little in return, but I was biohacking my way to surviving it. And so I got really good at the science and the supplementation and the devices and how to survive what I was doing. But it wasn't until I truly learned to love myself and give myself freedom, and get into the parasympathetic state and just be grounded and take a deep breath, that everything shifted. And then those biohacks are wonderful on top of that as a solid foundation. But it wasn't until that point that I really didn't have my biggest shift of all. So it was just self-love.
Wow, there's so much there. And I'm going to replay that portion to my clients over and over and over again, because even for me, I love supplements. I love biohacking. I love all of these tools, the diet, the powders, the pills, whatever it is. It doesn't replace self-love. And it does not replace getting true energy and, true cellular energy. We are not invincible. We can't run off of no sleep. It doesn't matter how many pills we take or whatever we're doing. And you are a true testimonial to that. I have a daughter who's had Epstein-Barr, which is a very common thing for high school kids. And she got over it. And we gave her some supplements. We told her what to do. But I said, you got to sleep, and you can't work out for your team, because she's an athlete, 4 hours a day and think it's not going to just kill your body. And I saw it going down that path again, this year, because the coach was asking her for double workouts. And I said, just so you know, when you're on that race line, those double practices aren't going to do you any good when you have adrenal fatigue and Epstein-Barr starts coming back. So there's this balance, and we really have to dig deep, just like you're saying, be grounded in us and the self-love. And teaching someone self-love is really difficult to do. And I'm so glad that you found your way to do that. Plant medicine is something a lot of people are finding benefit from. I have not done it. I am very open-minded to that. However, it's not something that I'm educated on in a deeper way. Just, but it is an opportunity or a possibility for someone that really needs to find that self-love and can't do it any other way. Well, Shawn, I'd love to get into the supplement industry and really tackle a couple of the big supplements that you, or ingredients that you are so fond of. And one is berberine. And berberine is a hot topic now. I take it daily. I'm someone who's been ketogenic. And by the way, everybody, do you realize that in the year 2000 is about when Shawn was doing keto? No one else was. Yeah. It really did not get popularized until about 2013, 2015. And now it's everywhere. It's on every single magazine you look at. So you really were there at the ground of keto. So, but berberine, people are taking it instead of metformin. I would say 90% of my clients have insulin resistance or type 2 diabetes. And with that, I mean, I talked about in the beginning here, how to reverse aging. Well, you need to reverse insulin resistance. And so I really want to dive into the mechanism of berberine and how it compares to metformin. And maybe you can just go into that and then also go into your version of berberine.
Yeah, I think, it's not just what I've seen is it's not just reversing insulin resistance, but like the more insulin sensitive you can be, like what we're told is insulinogenic, let's say, is great. I mean, when most of the population, I think 88% is metabolically dysfunctional. That's great to be like within normal limits range. But from what I've seen, essentially the lower you get blood glucose, hemoglobin A1C, and therefore insulin, the better. It's not like you just need to be in this normal range and good for you. It does appear that the anti-aging benefits are better the lower it is. And that's one of the ways that we see that, metformin, berberine, dihydroberberine, these glucose disposal agents work. They work on the AMP kinase pathway, that they have so much benefit. Even people that are anti-aging people, even people that are extremely lean, such as yourself, that are in great health, that are lean, that are athletic, that are probably have extremely low hemoglobin A1Cs, they still see benefit from taking this. So this is why my recommendation of my number one supplement, literally, it's funny you mentioned this, like my number one supplement, period, the end, that I would have everyone on is dihydroberberine. And so berberine, let's go back. So metformin is a famous glucose disposal agent, oral agent in the diabetic treatment realm. Also, originally, you may not know this, it was originally used for flu. And I think it actually has potential great benefits with some of the concerns going on right now in some of these viruses going on right now, that if you actually look at one of the the biggest risk factors for COVID, et cetera, flu, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, is metabolic dysfunction, right? So we're seeing that getting those things under control can make you far more resilient. So metformin is already an amazing drug. There's a study going on right now with 10,000 participants looking at anti-aging with it, not just glucose disposal, type 2 diabetes, et cetera. So this is very interesting how much money is being directed towards metformin, how much acknowledgement is being directed that way. Some negatives of metformin: it does deplete B12. You should supplement with B12 if you're taking it. It does have GI distress in about a third of people using it. There's a microbiome issue that can happen there. And then lastly, it can be, there was a tainted issue with metformin, and there was some recalls. So you definitely want to make sure that it's not part of that. But lastly, it doesn't perform as well as berberine head-to-head in a study. So, if metformin is one of the only ways that you can affordably get on something because, you have a great plan and, you're getting it for $0 or $5 a month and you're on a tight budget, then by all means get it with B12. If you can, berberine outperforms it, but berberine also has some issues. It has some GI distress in about a third of the users. And its bioavailability is kind of poor. So it takes about 500 milligrams 3 times a day. Dihydroberberine is about 5 times the bioavailability. And you only have to use, therefore, like 100 to 150 milligrams. And then if you can actually, because it lasts about twice as long in the plasma, you only have to take it twice a day instead of 3 times a day. So around 150 milligrams twice a day instead of 500 milligrams 3 times a day. And then again, no GI distress. And we've actually looked at B12 with both berberine and dihydroberberine, and we don't see that issue. So that's strictly a metformin thing. So dihydroberberine is probably my top recommendation. Is again, like the lower you get that insulin, like the higher, like you'll see growth hormones, growth factors, resistance to viruses like we talked about, and really invaders of any kind. So just greater resilience across the board when insulin is suppressed.
So essentially the anti-aging is all surrounded by lowering the insulin resistance. So my question is, insulin's job is to take the sugar in the blood and partition it to the muscles or wherever it's supposed to go. You say you carb load and you take the berberine or dihydroberberine. What's the mechanism? Where does it just keep insulin low, or where does that sugar and the carbs go? What is the mechanism at work there?
Yeah, so it's AMP kinase is like the method in which it works, and it's preferentially storing muscle blood glucose into muscle deferentially over going into fat. So that's one of the things, like when people talk about berberine or dihydroberberine, and they talk about that it's selectively, I'm not thinking of the right term, but it's selectively choosing muscle tissue over fat tissue for glucose to be stored in. And this is ideal. So, instead of that additional blood glucose being stored in fat and therefore making you fatter, it's going into muscle where it can be used readily as glycogen. So it's just the ideal way that we would want glucose to be stored. And then, it's upregulating this GLUT4 translocation into the cell. So It's the same thing that happens like when you, exercise like right after you eat, which I recommend, like do the postprandial stroll. It's powerful. Just 10 minutes of walking after you eat can lower that blood sugar dramatically. It will upregulate the GLUT4 receptors on the cells, and you will take in more of that blood glucose into the cell versus have it hang around as long and have insulin stay elevated as well.
Okay, that makes sense. And what about for people who are intermittent fasting or have low insulin in general or low blood sugar? Say they're in the range of, low 80s. Would you recommend taking the dihydroberberine or berberine at that time or just during mealtime?
No, I do. I still recommend it. And, you have to be careful with it. Like I wouldn't just, use double dose of dihydroberberine and you haven't done this before. And then you're like deciding I'm going to cut out carbs and I'm going to fast and, none of that would be ideal. You need to like kind of do these in steps. But I would say that it is ideal to continue to use the dihydroberberine if you're already doing these other things. Like it's still going to have synergistic benefit. The lower you suppress insulin and the lower you suppress blood glucose is ideal.
So you don't see people going into a hypoglycemic state from taking it on top of what they're doing. Awesome.
Well, so I mean, hypoglycemia, like really, for the most part, hypoglycemia is more a perceived state. Like it's certainly physiological, but there's sensitivities to it. There's individuality to it. I've seen people with, a blood sugar of 20, like come into my office, I've then drive in, and I've seen people with a blood sugar of 600, just having a great conversation. And so it's hard to say, like, and I've seen people that have a 400 going hypoglycemic because they were at 800. Yeah. And it gets really confusing as to like what hypoglycemia is. I mean, there's some symptoms for sure, but to me, it's almost one of those bioindividuality things, like a pain scale, Yeah. So I think some people think that they're hypoglycemic that may not truly be. I mean, yes, you're noticing some fluctuation, but I think there's some nuance there that has to be delineated. I think the more you get used to, like, if you're an experienced faster, chances are you're not going to be as sensitive to those kinds of things.
Well, I'm laughing as you're saying this because my husband will sometimes walk in the house and go, I think my blood sugar's low. I think my blood sugar's low. And he's hangry, right? Yeah. And we'll test his blood sugar. It's at 83, 80, whatever, and it's totally fine. But you're right. It's more of a perceived what you're used to. And then you've got type 1 diabetics or even type 2 that are used to being at a higher level. And then all of a sudden they're at a normal level, but they feel like they're going hypo. Well, we're going to take a short commercial break, and we're going to come back and talk about one of my favorite ingredients because it's in my accelerated keto. So we'll be right back with Shawn Wells. Welcome back to Accelerated Health Radio and TV. I'm your host, Sarah Banta, the owner of Accelerated Health Products. And today we have Shawn Wells talking all things supplements. So Shawn, we have a formula, Accelerated Keto, and I've been doing keto since 2015. I've been on all exogenous keto supplements. And when I was introduced to it saved me after a car accident, the mental brain fog, the anxiety, the depression I was experiencing. I needed it for the mental focus. It wasn't necessarily because I wanted to lose weight. It was more of the energy physically and mentally that I was looking for. And I got it. But my formulator and I said, we could do so much better than what is out there. So we did. And one of the main ingredients that we have in there is Teacrine. So I wanted to have you tell us all about Teacrine, which you formulated, and it is now in the Accelerated Keto product.
Yeah, 100%. So Teacrine is an ingredient I patented, as well as dihydroberberine, as well as the active isomer of ketones. RBHB and DBHB are my patents.
Amazing. I didn't even put that together. So there you go, guys.
Yeah.
All in.
Yeah, a lot of cool stuff. So Teacrine is one of the methylxanthines in this family with caffeine, theobromine, theophylline, and there's Teacrine, which is one of these methylxanthines. There's also methylliberine, which is called dynamine under our patented name. So we have Teacrine and dynamine. And those ingredients have been shown to be more nootropic than caffeine. They don't have the habituation effect of caffeine where you feel like physiologically compelled to keep using it. And they don't have the adaptation effect of caffeine where caffeine over time becomes less and less effective with continued use. And then we also don't see the side effects that are typical of caffeine. There are fast and slow metabolizers of caffeine. So there's a lot of bioindividuality there, a lot of biodiversity there, where for about a third of the population, they're slow metabolizers and they get all the side effects. Caffeine is actually fairly toxic and side effect ridden. Caffeine has the benefits when it converts to a new ingredient I patented that we can get to in a second called paraxanthine. But caffeine causes a lot of issues, and I'm a slow metabolizer as well. And so I get all the headaches and the brain fog and the issues that about a third of us get. And then a third are fast metabolizers. And those are the people that say, I can have caffeine and go straight to bed. Mm-hmm. And only about a third are this ideal of metabolizing caffeine. And this is the reason I've worked on, we talked about this before. My book is The Energy Formula. You can go to energyformula.com and check it out. Best-selling book, listed on Forbes and USA Today. It was a bestseller in 15 categories. I have it on sale for this time of year. Awesome. But the whole book is about energy because I've lived life without energy. And my most proud patents are around energy and ways for me to dig myself out of that hole. And for me, it was ketones and the berberine / dihydroberberine. It was these energy ingredients like Teacrine, dynamine, and now my new one that's called Infinity, which is paraxanthine, the caffeine metabolite. But these ingredients have just way more benefits and way less side effects than caffeine. And that's the ideal. And we're seeing that they're also anti-inflammatory on a systemic level and a neurological level. So reducing the inflammation around the brain and helping with healing around the brain, improved perfusion in the brain, meaning like more blood flow to the brain. So it's nootropic on a lot of levels. It still works on adenosine inhibition like caffeine does, but again, doesn't have a number of the side effects. So really great ingredients. Teacrine tends to be longer acting, so it's great in kind of like these all day formulas. Dynamine is shorter acting, maybe even a little shorter still than caffeine. So it's great in like pre-workouts and things like that, and energy drinks. But now we're seeing like we're playing a lot with like ratios of the two, because you can get the quick hit and you can get the longer lasting, and just depending on how long you want it to last, how you want it to feel, you can play with the ratios and the doses, and that's where things are at right now. Compound Solutions, who distributes it, does a great job with all that stuff. If you're formulators like me.
Well,
But
I am, and we are going to be looking into the combination because we
cool.
are coming out with Cognoblast, accelerated Cognoblast, which is a nootropic, and I'm currently on it at the moment. But I can tell you what I experienced from both of the products, the accelerated keto and the Cognoblast, is that my brain is zeroed in, focused, but steady energy. There's no jittery feeling. Do I drink coffee still? I drink coffee for the taste. I don't need it. I wake up and I take my keto and I go and I bang out my workout and I feel great regardless of my sleep. It just gives me that great physical energy and sustained focus. And I have a lot of clients that'll say, oh, does it have caffeine in it? Because I can't handle coffee. And I'll say, you'll be fine. And I don't have anybody that comes back to me and says it's too strong with the jitters or gives them the jitters. And there are a lot of keto products out there with caffeine that people have problems with.
Right.
So, and
Yeah.
that's where they're trying to get their energy from in those other keto formulas.
Right. And we have patents actually on some synergistic ingredients as well. Not only do they have synergy with each other, but also with alpha GPC as a really good form of choline, a bioavailable form of choline that can pass the blood-brain barrier.
Awesome.
That will contribute to acetylcholine, which is kind of the foundation to any nootropic stack. And then L-theanine, we also see some synergy with, that kind of puts your brain in the right brainwave state so that you're not as kind of hyper or in that monkey mind, or as maybe sympathetic nervous system dominant. So there's some synergy there with those ingredients as well.
One thing I've also noticed is my vision. Obviously, when you are overloaded with sugar, your blood glucose is high. People experience blurred vision. I don't have insulin resistance, but I can tell you that my vision and my hearing become more acute when I am taking these supplements. And that, I'm sure, is part of the anti-inflammatory properties. Shawn,
there's anti-inflammatory properties. There's neuronal conduction. There's and the sheath, protecting the sheath by being anti-glycation. Glycation is blood sugar damage, but having like more access to mitochondrial functioning on a high level, by having this alternate fuel substrate of ketones versus blood glucose, especially if you're metabolically dysfunctional. For those people, like turning on ketones is like turning on the lights. It's because they're insulin resistant, so that blood glucose is just hanging around. It's not getting into the cell to be used as fuel. So they're metabolically dysfunctional. They're mitochondrial dysfunctional. They're running low on fuel most of the time, and their neurons are actually firing slower. And really, like as the neuronal conduction in the brain, goes, like so does like ocular nerves and all that. Like those are highly related. So yeah.
Well, we are coming up to we've got about 10 minutes left, and I want to make sure we talk about the energy formula and any points that you really, because you're going to have to come back on and dive deeper into the book because it's amazing, and everything that you speak to is all aligns with what I try to preach. And we talked about 2 amazing ingredients and supplements that help with energy and insulin resistance and everything like that. But what else would you pull from your book that are must-dos and must-haves?
Wow, there's so many. So it's the energy formula, and it's an acronym for experiments, like looking into bioindividuality and testing, like metrics, like wearables, blood work, genetics testing, all that kind of stuff. There's surveys in there to assess like where you're at. Then the next one is nutrition, looking at all the diets. I don't just say, do keto, do this, do that. Like I actually look at like what works for you, what will you stick to, what makes sense for where you're at right now in life. Do that. Don't necessarily do what I'm doing. So I go through all the diets from vegan to carnivore and everything in between. Then next up is exercise. I have a lot of the hacks in there, things like high intensity interval training, even things like there's techniques called blood flow restriction, where you like cuff, like for example, your arms, and you get a cell swelling effect. You get faster adaptation. There's another technique from research called intraset stretching, where you, like for example, if it was biceps, like you do your you curls, and then at the end you flex out as hard as you can your tricep, which stretches the bicep. So like in between your set, it's more time under tension essentially. So it's intraset stretching. So you're stretching the bicep as long as it possibly can, and then you go right back into your curls. So it's just greater time under tension. It's greater fatigue, and that blood flow restriction essentially is tricking you into thinking that you've already done 10, 12, 15 reps. So, these are all hacks that I go through in there. Next up is routines, where I get into circadian rhythm, and knowing what time to eat, what time to go to sleep, how circadian rhythm affects your neurotransmitters and hormones, and how to establish good routines and healthy behaviors. Next up is growth, which is mental growth in terms of stoicism, in terms of nootropics, so it's mindset and it's supplementation and diet, getting into the CBD and some things like that as well. And then the last one is your tribe, where we get into connection and having like great people around you. And like, that's probably, after self-love, that's the most important. The Harvard study that's over 80 years running now has shown that the number one predictor of longevity is quality of relationships. So that's something that I get into in there, and living out your purpose is key to that as well. One of the other predictors of longevity, as a simple metric, is grip strength. So having muscle tone, training your body, and it's not just having muscle, but being able to access that muscle. So it's the mind muscle connection, the neurological use of your muscle, being able to move with your muscle, use your muscle. That's where I have a hidden chapter, if you go to energyformula.com, on natural movement. That's something that we don't do really anymore. So learning how to, move through, like Kelly Starrett has a great book on this, that one of the guys that led to CrossFit, doing that. Supple Leopard is his book actually. And it's like that natural movement, the crawling, the rolling, these things getting out there and using your body is really important. And I cite data in there on exercise snacking. And it's a new terminology for you actually have greater longevity moving your body 5 minutes for 1 hour every day throughout the day than working out at the gym for 1 hour. I'm not saying to not work out with weights, because that's great too, but they've shown that it takes about 45 minutes of your workout to just undo the sitting syndrome, the lack of circulation. Your body actually starts to remold and reshape itself to hold itself in the position that you're training it, to use the least amount of energy. So your fascia, your muscle, your bone is all remodeling to keep you in this sitting position. because that's what you're telling it we need to do when you're either in bed, you're in the car, you're at the desk at work, you're, on the couch, like all these things. Like, so it's important. Take 5 minutes every hour. It's good for a break on your eyes as well. It's not good to have that much screen time. And just do some air squats, do some planks, do some, some rolling, something like out in the sunshine, if you can get out in the yard or whatever it is. Just find ways to move your body, and it'll have a profound effect on longevity. And then in the book, like every chapter, I have formulators corners that go through all the supplements, stacks, doses, brands. And then I have resource hacks that get into all the devices you can use, all the red light devices and saunas and cold plunges and all these things, and, blue light blocking glasses and, all the Aura rings and all that. I get into all that. And then there's about 60 full color diagrams in there too. So, I break it down. I make it as simple as possible. Every chapter has chapter summaries. There's quizzes in there. It's really fun. Everything's cited, over 100 scientific references. So I'm really proud of it. It has a lot of my story in there too, the things that I've been through and how I got here. Like, and I still struggle, by the way. Like, I still, binge on eating. I still get depressed. I still, struggle day to day. So it's not perfect for me. I still get stressed out, and I still have things that overwhelm me at times. So, I'm far from perfect. I'm just a guy who's, trying to keep himself healthy and make impact.
Shawn, I just got the chills because I interview a lot of people, and especially with social media, everyone's perfect. Everyone's got their game face on in the public. And just for you to come out and be so humble and so open and honest with your struggle. Everyone's struggling. I struggle, and it's part of life. And we're all just on this journey of how to do us better, how to be our best self. And you are going to take a step back, but that doesn't mean you give up. It's not all or nothing. And everything that you have in this book is everything that I preach, everything I've practiced, everything I really aspire to. And everyone, please go support Shawn, because his heart is bigger than his brain, and his brain obviously is very big. And I just love everything about you. I mean, from the moment I started taking supplements that included your ingredients way back when no one even knew who you were, to today where you are the guy. I just am so intrigued, and I respect you so much for who you are and what you've done. And so make sure you tell people where they can find the book and where they can follow you.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. I really appreciate that. Because I've been on the edge of life several times, and almost taken my life several times. And that's why in my social media, like, I talk a lot about supplements and biohacks, but I also have a lot of posts on mental health, because it's just near and dear to my heart. And like I said, I don't think I would be here if I hadn't, taken some of these steps and had some of the great people that have come into my life. And you're one of those people. You're doing a great job, and I'm thankful for you as well. My social media on Instagram is just at Shawn Wells, ShawnWells. And my book is energyformula.com. And I have hidden chapters and recipe books and guides and all kinds of things there. And then at ShawnWells.com, I have newsletters that are free. I don't charge. I don't have an affiliate anything. All this information I do is cited. It's really informative, and I just put out information for people to consume and make them healthier. So I'd love the support. And we don't sell any information. We don't sell you on anything. The only thing I've ever sold is my book. So I appreciate it. You buy it. And I have an Audible version of it as well. That is my voice.
Amazing.
tough, but it was very rewarding. So no matter how you want to consume it, we just came out with a paperback. So there's a hardcover, full color front to back, the paperback, the ebook, and then the Audible as well. So a lot of different ways that you can check out my book, and I appreciate it. Thank you for having me on.
Awesome, Shawn. Well, we're going to have you back. And thank you for joining us, everyone else today. If I can help you out, you can contact me through the website, acceleratedhealthproducts.com. The accelerated keto that contains some of Shawn's ingredients are at acceleratedhealthproducts.com. You can use coupon W4HC20 for 20% off site-wide. And make sure you join us every week at Accelerated Health Radio and TV on Tuesdays at 1 p.m. Pacific time. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Shawn.
Bye.